Tonight we are going to spend some time together exploring a very simple idea from Zen Buddhism. It is an idea that has been passed quietly from teacher to student for many generations, carried like a candle flame from one pair of hands to the next. The idea is this: just to be alive is enough. Not that life must be perfect. Not that everything must be resolved. Just that this breath, this moment, this gentle unfolding of the evening is already whole, already complete, already worthy of your full attention. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. There is an old Zen story about a teacher named Mazu who was gravely ill. A student came to him and asked, with great concern, "How are you, teacher?" And Mazu said simply, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha." In the old scriptures, a sun-faced Buddha lives for 1800 years. A moon-faced Buddha lives for a single day and a single night. Mazu was saying, whether I have 1,000 years left or only this one evening, it is the same to me. If what remains of my life is one more day, that is not a fragment of a life. That is a whole life. Because wholeness was never about how long it lasts. Tonight, whichever kind of day you have had, whether you feel like you have all the time in the world or barely enough hours left to breathe, you are welcome here. There is nothing you need to fix before we begin. There is nothing missing from this moment that would make it more complete. So settle in. Let the weight of the day begin to ease. And when you are ready, let us begin our journey together. There is a line from the ancient Buddhist teachings that says, "Peace comes from within. Do not seek it without." It is one of those phrases that sounds almost too simple. And yet, like a stone worn smooth by a river, its simplicity is the result of something very deep wearing away everything that is not essential. Tonight, we begin with this simplicity. We begin with the question that lives at the heart of so much of our restlessness. Why is it so hard to simply be here? Why does the mind, even in the most beautiful and quiet moments, reach for something else? Something more, something different, something that is not yet here. It is a gentle question. There is no hurry in answering it, but it is worth sitting with, the way you might sit with a friend in the evening, not needing to solve anything, just being together with what is true. Let us begin with a story. There is a tale about a young traveler walking along a country road in the rolling hills of a green and misty land. It was late afternoon. The light was golden and low. The traveler had been walking for many hours, and the road ahead still stretched far into the distance. After some time, an old cart came along, pulled by a slow and patient horse. The driver, an older man with kind eyes and weathered hands, slowed beside the traveler and said, "You look like you could use a ride." The traveler was grateful. They climbed up beside the driver, and for a while, neither of them spoke. The wheels of the cart turned slowly over the dirt road. Birds called from the hedgerows. The air smelled of cut grass and coming rain. Then the driver asked, simply, "Where are you headed?" And the traveler, who was young and full of energy and dreams, began to speak. "Well," they said, "first I am going to study with a famous teacher in the East. I have heard he can teach you to see the world in a completely new way. And then I want to learn about herbs and healing, because I have always been drawn to that. And then there is a monastery in the mountains where they practice silence for months at a time, and I want to try that. And I have heard about a woman in a coastal village who teaches the old songs, and I would love to learn to sing like that." and there is a form of bodywork that is supposed to release old tension from the muscles and bones. And I want to study the stars. And I want to learn to paint. And I want to. The list went on. And I have heard there is a valley in the far north where people live to be very old because they drink a certain kind of water. I would love to go there and learn their ways. And there is a tradition of walking meditation I want to practice. And a kind of pottery that is supposed to teach you patience. Each new desire was spoken with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. The traveler was not boasting. They were simply sharing the honest contents of their heart, the way a child might empty their pockets to show you all the treasures they have collected. And the contents were many. A whole lifetime of doing would not have been enough to hold them all. The driver listened quietly. He did not interrupt. He did not judge. He simply held the reins loosely in his hands and let the horse walk at its own pace. He let the traveler speak until the words began to slow, the way a stream slows as it reaches a wide, flat plain. And then, after a long and comfortable pause, the driver turned and looked at the traveler with gentle eyes. "You carry a great many wishes, don't you?" he said. It was not a criticism. It was an observation, as soft as the evening light. But something about it landed in the traveler's chest in a way they did not expect. They opened their mouth to respond, and then closed it. For the first time, they felt the weight of all that wanting. Not the joy of it, which was real, but the weight. The sheer volume of things they believed they needed to experience before life could feel complete. The cart rolled on. The horse walked steadily. And in the silence that followed, the traveler noticed something they had not noticed before. The sky was enormous. The hills were soft and green. The air was sweet. And this moment, right here on this simple cart, on this ordinary road, was already full, already alive, already enough. They did not say any of this out loud, but something shifted quietly inside them, a small, almost invisible loosening, like a fist that had been clenched for so long it had forgotten it was clenching, and now, very gently, began to open. The Buddha once said, "It is in the nature of things that joy arises in a person free from remorse." Perhaps we could add, it is also in the nature of things that peace arises in a person who, even for a moment, stops reaching for what is not here. Not because the reaching is wrong, but because the peace was already waiting just beneath it. There is a beautiful thread in the Zen tradition, a way that wisdom travels not through books or lectures but through simple human encounter. One person, sitting with another, and something true passing between them like light through a window. The phrase, "just to be alive is enough," has traveled in this way. It was spoken by an old Zen teacher to his student many years ago in a monastery where the mornings were quiet and the practice was deep. And that student carried those words with him for a long time, the way you might carry a small, smooth stone in your pocket, touching it now and then to remember something important. The student did not fully understand the words at first. How could he? He was young. His mind was full of questions and ambitions and plans. But the words stayed with him, patient as a seed in winter soil, waiting for the right season. And years later, that student, now a teacher himself, was driving across a bridge with a young person beside him. They were talking about life, about practice, about what matters. The young person was telling him about all the things they were doing, all the places they were going, all the paths they were walking. And at some point, the teacher turned and said those words, "Just to be alive is enough." He did not explain them. He did not elaborate. He simply offered them the way you might offer someone a glass of water on a warm day. And something in the young person heard it, really heard it, the way you sometimes hear a bell, not with your ears but with your whole body. It was not an instruction. It was more like a gift, a piece of good news, passed from hand to hand across the years. A quiet light carried from one generation to the next, never dimming. This is how the deepest teachings travel in the Buddhist tradition, not as rules to follow, but as invitations to taste something for yourself. The Buddha himself encouraged this spirit of gentle inquiry when he said, "Do not accept anything merely because I have said it. Test it for yourself. When you find that something leads to kindness, to benefit, to peace, then follow that path. Just to be alive is enough. You do not have to believe this tonight. You can hold it lightly, the way you might hold a feather in your palm, not gripping it, just noticing it is there." What is beautiful about this teaching is how gentle it is. It does not ask you to renounce your dreams. It does not say that wanting things is wrong or that your wishes are foolish. The traveler on the cart was not foolish for wanting to learn and grow and explore. That is part of being alive, and it is a lovely part. But there is a difference between wanting something and believing you cannot be at peace until you have it. There is a difference between holding a wish in your open hand and clutching it so tightly that your fingers ache. The old Zen teachers would sometimes say, "Have goals, but do not be had by them." It is a small shift, but it changes everything. Think of it this way. When you hold a cup of tea, you hold it gently. If you grip it too tightly, you might break it, or burn yourself, or spill it everywhere. The tea does not ask to be held tightly. It asks to be held with care. And in the same way, your wishes, your hopes, your plans for the future, they do not need to be gripped. They can be held gently. And when they are held gently, there is room for something else to be noticed. The warmth of the cup, the smell of the tea, the simple pleasure of sitting still. And perhaps, as we sit with this idea together, we can begin to notice all the quiet ways we tell ourselves the opposite. All the subtle stories that whisper, "Not yet," "Not enough." When this is different, then I will be at peace. When that is resolved, then I will rest. When I have accomplished this one more thing, then I will feel complete. These stories are not bad. They are very human. We all carry them. But tonight, just for tonight, we can set them down for a little while. We can let them rest beside us, the way a traveler might set down a heavy pack and sit for a moment by the road. The pack will still be there in the morning. But right now, there is just the evening. Just the breath. Just this. There is a saying in the Zen tradition, sitting quietly, doing nothing. Spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. It is a reminder that so much of what we long for does not require our effort. It requires our presence. It requires us to stop and notice and allow what is already happening to be enough. Let us explore this feeling together through a scene you may recognize from your own life. Imagine someone on the last night of a long trip. They have been staying in the mountains, far from the noise and pace of daily life. For several days, they have been walking quiet trails, breathing clean air, letting the rhythm of the natural world slowly replace the rhythm of their busy mind. And now it is the final evening. Tomorrow they will pack their things and return to the life that is waiting for them. But tonight, they are lying on their back on the soft earth, looking up at the sky, The stars are extraordinary, not because they are doing anything special, but because they are simply there, scattered across the darkness like 1,000 tiny lanterns. The air is cool but comfortable. There is the faint sound of water moving over stones somewhere nearby. The smell of pine and damp earth and wood smoke. The body is tired in a good way, the kind of tiredness that comes from walking a long distance and then resting fully. Somewhere an owl calls, low and unhurried. The sound seems to belong to the darkness the way a stone belongs to a riverbed. It does not interrupt the quiet. It deepens it. And in this moment, something is very clear. Nothing is missing. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to fix. The mind is quiet, or if it is not entirely quiet, the thoughts that drift through it are like clouds passing across the face of the moon. They come and they go, and they do not disturb the stillness underneath. There is a phrase in the Zen tradition, mushotoku, which means without gaining mind. It points to those moments when we are simply present, not trying to get anything out of the experience, not measuring it or evaluating it, just being here. Lying under the stars, this person has, without trying, arrived at mushotoku. They are not trying to have a spiritual experience. They are not trying to be at peace. They simply are. And the peace arises on its own, the way dew appears on grass in the early morning, without anyone asking it to. A thought about work floats up. What needs to be done when they get back? A meeting, a conversation they have been putting off. And usually, this kind of thought would hook them. It would pull them out of the present and into the future, into planning and worrying and rehearsing. But tonight, something in them simply says, not now, not with force, not with resistance. Just a gentle turning away, the way you might turn from a window to face a fire. The thought drifts by, and the stillness remains. The stars remain. The quiet remains. A memory surfaces. Something that happened months ago. A difficult conversation. A moment of embarrassment or regret. And again, usually, this memory would pull them backward, into the past, into replaying and wishing things had gone differently. But tonight, the memory rises and then dissolves, like breath on cold air. It has no weight. It has no pull. Because this moment, here, under the stars, is so palpable, so full, so real, that the past simply cannot compete with it. This is what it feels like when just to be alive is enough. Not a grand realization, not a blinding insight, just a quiet settling, a recognition that this, right here, is complete. The stars are not going anywhere, and neither are you. The Buddha spoke of this quality when he said, "Do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment." He was not saying that the past and the future are unimportant. He was pointing to something simpler, that the present moment is where life actually lives. It is the only place where the stars are real, where the breath is real, where you are real. Everything else is a thought about something that is not here. And you have felt this. Perhaps not under the stars, but somewhere. Some moment in your life when the noise fell away and something underneath became very clear. It may have lasted only a few seconds, but in those seconds you knew. You knew that nothing was missing. That just to be here, just to be breathing, just to be alive was enough. That knowing has not gone anywhere. It is still inside you, the way the sky is always behind the clouds. Tonight, As you rest here, you are simply making a little space for it to shine through again. There is a verse sometimes attributed to the old masters that says, "The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in one dewdrop on the grass." Think about that for a moment. Not the vast sky reflected in a vast ocean, which we might expect, but the whole sky in a single dewdrop. The teaching is that the smallest moment, the simplest experience, the quietest evening can hold everything. Wholeness does not require grandness. It can live in a single breath, in the flicker of a candle, in the sound of a cartwheel turning on a country road. You do not need extraordinary circumstances to feel that life is enough. You need only the willingness to be still for a moment and to notice what is already here. Let us visit one more story before we rest. There was an old woman who lived in a small house at the edge of a quiet village, nestled in a valley where the mountains met the plains. She had lived there for many years. Her house was simple. She had a wooden chair, a table, a bed, a small stove for cooking, and a window that looked out over the valley. Every evening, as the sun went down, she would light a single candle and place it on the windowsill. Then she would sit in her chair and watch the light fade from the sky. She did this every evening, without fail, in every season. In winter, when the frost crept across the glass, the candle made a small circle of warmth. In summer, when the long light lingered, the candle was almost unnecessary, but she lit it anyway, out of love for the ritual. The people of the village knew her, of course. They noticed that she seemed unusually content. She did not complain about the things most people complained about. She did not seem to want what she did not have. She was kind to everyone, but she did not need anyone's approval or attention. There was a steadiness about her, a warmth, like the candle she lit each evening. Children liked to be near her, the way they like to be near a warm stove on a cold day, without quite knowing why. From time to time, someone from the village would come to visit her. Often they came because they were struggling with something, a worry, a sadness, a restless feeling they could not name. They would sit with her, and often they would leave feeling lighter, though they could not always explain what had changed. One evening, a young woman came to her door. She was anxious and unsettled. She sat down across from the old woman and said, "Everyone tells me you know the secret of happiness. What is it? I have tried so many things. I have read books. I have traveled. I have worked hard. I have tried to be a good person. But I still feel like something is missing." The old woman listened. She did not rush to answer. She poured the young woman a cup of tea and sat with her for a while in silence, the way the Zen teachers do. Then she said, "Can I tell you what I do each evening?" The young woman nodded. "Each evening, I light this candle, and I sit here, and I watch the sky change. That is all." The young woman waited for more, but there was no more. "But what are you looking at?" she asked. "What are you thinking about? What are you trying to achieve?" The old woman smiled. "I am not looking at anything in particular," she said. "I am not trying to achieve anything. I am just here, and that is enough." The young woman frowned. It could not be that simple. There had to be more to it. A technique, a practice, a secret teaching. She thanked the old woman politely and went home, a little disappointed. But something strange happened over the following weeks. The old woman's words kept returning to her at unexpected moments. While she was washing her hands, while she was walking to the market, while she was lying in bed at night, waiting for sleep. I am just here. And that is enough. Each time the words returned, something in her softened. Not dramatically. Not in a way she could point to and say, "There, that is it," but softly, quietly, like snow melting in spring. The tight knot of wanting that she carried in her chest began, very slowly, to loosen. One evening, the young woman found herself standing at her own window. The sun was setting. Without thinking, she paused. She did not light a candle. She did not sit down. She simply stood there for a moment and watched the sky change color. Orange to pink to violet to a deep, tender blue. And for just a breath, maybe two, she was not reaching for anything. She was not waiting for anything. She was simply here. It did not last long. The ordinary rhythms of the evening soon returned. But she smiled to herself because she understood, in her body rather than in her mind, what the old woman had meant. She did not become the old woman. She did not move to a small house and light candles. She continued to live her life, with all its busyness and complexity. But something had changed. She had tasted, even briefly, the possibility that nothing was missing. And once you taste that, even once, it stays with you. It becomes a quiet companion, a place you can return to again and again whenever the noise of the world grows too loud. In the Buddhist tradition, there is a word for this kind of contentment. It does not mean that you stop caring about the world. It does not mean you give up your dreams. It simply means that your peace does not depend on things being different than they are, right now, in this moment. You can want things and still be at peace. You can work toward a better future and still be at rest. Because your rest does not come from what you have. It comes from the quiet willingness to be fully here with what is. As the Buddha gently reminded his students, enough is a feast. Not because there is always plenty on the table, but because the heart that knows how to rest is always nourished. So tonight, as you lie here, let us try something very simple. You do not need to sit up or change your position. You do not need to concentrate or try hard at anything. In fact, trying hard is the opposite of what we are doing. We are practicing the gentle art of not trying at all. Simply notice where you are. Notice the surface beneath you, how it holds you without effort. Notice the air around you, how it touches your skin. Notice the gentle rhythm of your breathing, the way it comes and goes without your effort, the way it has been coming and going your whole life, faithfully, without once asking for your permission or your praise. Isn't that remarkable when you stop to think about it? All day long, your breath has been with you. Through every conversation, every task, every worry, every joy, your breath has been quietly arriving and quietly departing. It asks nothing of you. It simply gives. And imagine, if you like, that you are lying under a wide and open sky. The stars are out. The air is soft. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to be. There is no one you need to become tonight. You are simply here, alive, breathing, and that is enough. If thoughts come, let them come. If they go, let them go. You do not need to chase them or push them away. They are like clouds drifting across a vast sky. The sky is not bothered by the clouds. It simply holds them gently and lets them pass. In the Zen tradition, They sometimes call this big mind, the mind that is spacious enough to hold everything without being disturbed by anything. You do not need to achieve big mind tonight. You are simply resting inside it, the way a bird rests inside the sky. And if, somewhere in this stillness, you catch a glimpse of that feeling, even just a flicker, the feeling that nothing is missing, that this moment is complete, then rest in it. You do not need to hold on to it. You do not need to understand it. Just let it be here with you, like candlelight on a windowsill. Quiet, steady, warm. Just to be alive is enough. Just to be breathing, just to be resting, just to be here together in this quiet moment. That is enough. The stars do not worry about whether they will shine tomorrow. They simply shine now. And whether this night is long or short, whether it stretches on for hours or passes in what feels like a breath, it is a whole night. The ancient teachers would say it this way: sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. A life that lasts 1,000 years and a life that lasts a single day are both complete lives. Not because a single day is better than nothing, but because a single day, fully lived, is the whole thing. And tonight, however much of it remains, is your whole night, complete as it is. Let us pause here for a moment. Notice how you feel, and whenever you are ready, we will continue together. Let us explore a story about a fisherman who lived beside a wide, slow river. Every morning, before the mist had lifted, the fisherman would carry his net down to the water's edge. The path from his small house to the river was worn smooth by years of his footsteps. He knew every stone, every root, every place where the grass grew tall. The river was generous. It was full of silver fish that flashed in the early light, and most mornings he would pull in enough for himself and enough to share with his neighbors. He was grateful for this. He loved the river. He loved the quiet of the early morning, the way the water looked almost silver before the sun was fully up, the way the birds began to call just as he reached the bank. But one season, something changed. His net began catching strange things. Instead of fish, he would pull up old objects from the riverbed. A worn-out shoe, heavy with mud. A rusted lantern with no glass left in it. A wooden box with nothing inside. Once, he pulled up a letter, but the ink had washed away so long ago that the paper was blank. He held it in his hands for a moment, this message from someone long forgotten, and then the paper dissolved between his fingers. At first, he was annoyed. He threw the objects back and cast again. But the same thing kept happening. Day after day, his net snagged on old things that the river had been carrying downstream for who knows how long, tumbling along the bottom where no one could see them. One evening, he went to visit an older fisherman who lived further along the bank. He told him what had been happening. The older fisherman listened and nodded slowly. "Where are you casting?" the older fisherman asked. "Deep," the fisherman said. "Near the bottom. That is where the biggest fish are." The older fisherman smiled. "That is also where everything that has been lost ends up," he said. "The river carries it all downstream. Shoes, lanterns, old tools, old sorrows. It all settles to the bottom eventually. If you drag your net along the bottom, you will catch the past." "Then where should I cast?" the fisherman asked. "Higher," the older fisherman said. "Near the surface, where the water is fresh. The fish are there too, you know. They are just waiting for you to notice them." The fisherman went home and sat on the bank as the sun went down. He looked at his net. It was tangled with bits of old rope and river debris. And something occurred to him, quietly, the way realizations often come, not like thunder, but like the first light of dawn. The net was catching the past, not because the river wanted to give him the past, but because his net was dragging too deep, too close to the bottom where old things settle. He began to cast differently. He let the net float higher in the water, closer to the surface, where the current was fresh and alive. He stopped dragging it along the bottom, and the old things, the shoes and the lanterns and the empty boxes, they kept flowing past, as they always had, but now they flowed past without getting caught. The river had not changed, only the way he met it. There is something in this story that touches one of the oldest teachings in the Buddhist tradition. Over 2,000 years ago, the Buddha sat with his students on a quiet evening and offered them a teaching that has come to be known as the Discourse on the Auspicious Night, or, as some translate it, the Wonderful Day. The heart of what he shared was simple. He said, "Do not chase after what has already passed. Do not place all your hopes on what has not yet arrived. What is here, right now, see it clearly, rest in it fully, and live this day as though it matters, because it does." He was sitting with his students under the open sky, and perhaps some of them could feel what he meant, right there in that moment. The warm evening, the sound of each other's breathing, the simple fact of being together, alive, with nothing urgent to attend to. Just this. But the teaching goes deeper than a pleasant evening. Because most of us, even in our quietest moments, are not entirely here. Part of us is still back in something that happened yesterday, or last week, or years ago. And part of us has already leapt ahead to tomorrow, to next month, to some imagined future where things will finally be the way we want them to be. And the present, which is the only place we actually are, sits here quietly, waiting for us to notice it. The Buddha was not saying that the past is meaningless or that the future does not matter. He was pointing at something more tender than that. He was saying that when we chase the past, when we grab hold of old memories and old hurts and pull them into the present moment, we leave this moment behind. And when we lean so far into the future that all our happiness depends on something that has not happened yet, we also leave this moment behind. And this moment, he seemed to say, is where your life actually is. It is a remarkable thing to consider. We spend so much of our energy managing the past and preparing for the future. And these are not useless activities. The past teaches us. The future invites us. But somewhere in the middle, between what has been and what might be, there is this quiet evening, this breath, this soft, unhurried moment. And how often do we really arrive here? How often do we let the past be the past and the future be the future, and simply settle into the present, the way you might settle into a warm bath at the end of a long day? The old Zen teachers had a phrase for this quality of presence. They called it beginner's mind. It is the mind that meets each moment as if for the first time, not weighed down by what it already knows, not leaning forward into what it expects, just open, just here, like a child seeing snow for the first time, or hearing music, or watching a candle flame. You had beginner's mind once, naturally, without trying. Every child does, and it has not left you. It is simply waiting, beneath the layers of habit and worry and planning, for a quiet moment when it can surface again. Tonight could be that moment. There is a difference, you see, between remembering and chasing. We all remember things. That is natural. The mind holds images and feelings from our lives the way a riverbank holds the shape of the water that has passed over it. You can remember a person you loved. You can remember a place that made you happy. You can remember a difficult season and what it taught you. Memory, in this way, is gentle. It is part of being human. It is a kind of honoring. But chasing is something different. Chasing is when the memory reaches up and pulls you out of where you are. It is when you leave this room, this bed, this quiet evening, and you go back into something that is over. You replay a conversation you wish had gone differently. You revisit a time when things were better, and you ache for it. You turn an old regret over and over in your hands, as if examining it one more time might change what happened. That is chasing. And it is a kind of leaving, a quiet departure from the only place where you can actually rest. You can tell the difference between the two by how they feel in the body. When you gently remember something, there is a warmth to it, a softness. You touch the memory lightly, like touching the surface of water with your fingertips, and then you come back. But when you chase a memory, there is a tightening, a pulling forward, or a sinking back. The body leans. The breath changes. You are no longer here. You have gone somewhere else, somewhere that exists only in the mind, and the present moment fades like a room you have walked out of. The same is true of the future. There is nothing wrong with making plans, with hoping, with looking forward to things. That is part of the natural rhythm of a life. But when we place all our happiness on the other side of something that has not happened yet, we create a strange situation. We tell ourselves, I will be at peace when this is resolved. I will be happy when that arrives. I will finally rest when everything is in order. But that moment never quite comes, does it? Because when one thing is resolved, another takes its place. The finish line keeps moving, and we keep running toward it, not realizing that the place we are running from was already home. There is a saying sometimes shared among the old Zen teachers, if not now, when? It is a gentle question, not a demand, just a quiet wondering. If peace is not available in this moment, when exactly do we expect it to arrive? And what are we missing while we wait? Let us visit a story about this, one that comes from the tradition of meditation retreats. It is a story about how quickly we can leave peace behind and how close peace always remains. There was once a person who came to a retreat carrying a great deal of inner weight. For much of their life, they had struggled with a harsh voice inside them. A voice that criticized, that doubted, that reminded them of every mistake and shortcoming. It was an exhausting companion, this voice, and it had been with them for as long as they could remember. Some of us may know this voice. It has different things to say to each of us, but the tone is always the same. Always urgent. Always certain that we are not quite enough. The retreat was held in a quiet place, a simple building surrounded by old trees and open fields. Each day, the retreatants would sit together in silence, morning and afternoon, and then meet briefly with a teacher to talk about what was arising in their practice. For the first few days, this person's inner world was stormy. The harsh voice was loud. The silence of the retreat seemed only to amplify it. But slowly, as the days went on, something began to shift. The way a lake settles after a wind dies down, the surface of their mind began to grow still. And one morning, something quite beautiful happened. It was early. Sunlight was coming through the windows of the meditation hall at a low angle, making everything golden and warm. The room was very quiet. And in that quietness, this person found, to their surprise, that the harsh voice had gone silent. Not because they had fought it or pushed it away, but because the stillness had grown so deep that the voice simply had nothing to hold on to. It was like a fire that had run out of fuel. After the sitting, they went to meet with their teacher. The teacher was sitting in a small room, in a simple chair by a window. And as the person entered and sat down, it was clear that they were different. There was a softness in their face, a calm in their eyes that the teacher had not seen before. For a little while, neither of them spoke. They simply sat together in the warmth of the morning, and the silence between them was full and kind. Then the person smiled, and the teacher smiled back. "It is peaceful today," the person said quietly. "Yes," the teacher said. "It is." And then, after a moment, the person's expression began to change. "But yesterday," they said, "yesterday was so difficult." There was a moment when someone said something during the walking period, and it reminded me of a situation I have been struggling with at home, and I felt this wave of frustration. And then I started thinking about all the times, and the teacher watched something remarkable happen. As the person spoke about yesterday, the peace left their face. It drained away like color leaving the sky at dusk. Their shoulders tightened. Their brow furrowed. Their breathing became shallow. The warmth that had been so present just moments ago was replaced by something contracted and heavy. They had been at peace. Completely, genuinely at peace. And then they had reached back into the river and pulled out yesterday's debris, and now they were holding it, and it was changing them, right there, in real time. The teacher sat with this. There was nothing to fix. It was not a mistake the person had made. It was simply the habit of the mind, the deep habit of chasing the past, of believing that our stories about yesterday are more real than the stillness of right now. The teacher felt a gentle sadness watching this. Not a heavy sadness. More like the feeling you get when you see someone set down a cup of cool water on a hot day, untouched, because they are too busy talking about the water they drank yesterday. The water is right there. The refreshment is right there. But the person has turned away from it to visit a memory. After a while, the teacher said gently, "Can you feel what just happened?" The person paused, and slowly, they could. They could feel the difference between where they had been a few minutes ago and where they were now. The peace had not gone anywhere. It was still here, in the room, in the morning light, in the space between them. But the person had left it, briefly, to visit a place that no longer existed. "Where did the peace go?" the teacher asked. The person thought for a moment. "It did not go anywhere," they said, surprised. "I went somewhere." "Yes," the teacher said. "That is all that happened." And in that recognition, something softened again. The person took a breath. They looked around the room, at the light on the wall, at the simple chair, at the teacher's patient face. And the peace, which had been here all along, began to return. Not because anyone brought it back, but because the person stopped leaving. This is what the Buddha meant by chasing the past. Not that we must never think about what came before, but that we can notice when a memory stops being a gentle visitor and starts becoming a place we move into, a place that pulls us out of this moment which is the only moment that is real. There is a tenderness in this teaching. It does not scold us for having minds that wander. Of course, the mind wanders. It has been wandering for your entire life. It is very good at it. But the teaching says, you are not your wandering mind. You are also the one who can notice the wandering and gently return. You are the room, not just the person who keeps leaving it. And each return is complete. It does not matter how many times you have left. It does not matter how far you have gone. The return is always available, always fresh, always whole. The Buddha once compared this to the way the ocean always tastes of salt, no matter where you dip your cup. In the same way, the present moment always tastes of peace, no matter how many times you have forgotten it. The teaching simply invites us to notice where we go and to gently come back, again and again, without judgment, without frustration, just a quiet return, the way a bird returns to its branch after circling the sky. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. The old teachers understood that whether a day stretches out long before you or passes quickly, it is a complete day. Yesterday was one whole day. Today is another. Neither one is a fragment of something larger. Each one is the whole thing, if you are present for it. And so we do not need to drag yesterday into today to make today count. Today already counts. It counted the moment you opened your eyes this morning. It is counting right now. Let us rest with one more story before we move on. There was a potter who lived and worked in a small village. She had been making bowls and cups and plates for many years, and she was skilled at her craft. Her hands knew the clay the way a musician's hands know their instrument, with a kind of easy, intimate familiarity. She loved the feel of the wet earth between her fingers, the way it yielded and shaped itself under gentle pressure. She loved the sound of the wheel turning, steady and low, like a kind of humming. One day, she made a bowl that was, by her own estimation, the most beautiful thing she had ever created. The shape was perfect. The walls were thin and even. The glaze caught the light in a way that made it seem almost alive, shifting from blue to green depending on the angle. She placed it on the highest shelf in her workshop and looked at it every day with quiet pride. And then, one afternoon, the bowl fell from the shelf and broke. She gathered the pieces carefully and placed them in a cloth, and then she put the cloth on the same shelf where the bowl had been. And every day, she looked at the broken pieces the way she had once looked at the whole bowl. But now, instead of pride, she felt a kind of ache, a longing for what had been. If only she had placed it more securely. If only the shelf had been lower. If only, if only. Weeks passed, and she did not make another bowl. She would sit at her wheel, but her hands would not move. The clay waited, soft and ready, but she could not bring herself to begin. What was the point, she thought, when the beautiful things you make can be lost so easily? Her workshop, which had once been a place of warmth and creation, grew quiet. Dust settled on the wheel. The clay in its bucket began to dry around the edges. One afternoon, a child from the village wandered into her workshop. The child looked around at the quiet wheel, the untouched clay, the shelf with the cloth bundle. "What is in there?" the child asked, pointing at the shelf. "The pieces of something beautiful," the potter said. The child climbed up on a stool and peeked at the broken pieces. They turned one over in their small hands, examining it with curiosity rather than sadness. Then the child looked at the potter's wheel and at the soft clay beside it. "Why don't you make a new one?" the child asked. The potter opened her mouth to explain, to say that it would not be the same, that the bowl had been special, that some things cannot be replaced. But the child was not really listening. The child had already picked up a small lump of clay and was squishing it between their fingers, delighted by the softness of it, giggling at the way it squeezed through the gaps. And watching this, something loosened in the potter. The child was not mourning the past. The child was not worried about the future. The child was simply here, with the clay, with the softness, with the pleasure of touching something alive and willing. The clay was still wet. The wheel was still turning. The present was still offering itself, patient and ready and waiting. The potter did not make another bowl that day, but she did sit at her wheel again. She put her hands on the clay and felt its coolness, its willingness, the way it rose under her palms like something breathing. And she realized that she had been spending her days looking at broken pieces when the living clay had been right here all along. This is what happens when we chase the past. We sit with the broken pieces of something that is over, and we forget that the clay is still wet. The present is still offering itself to us, fresh and new, every single moment. Not as a replacement for what was lost, but as something whole in itself. Something that does not need the past in order to be beautiful. We all have our broken bowls. We all have things we look at on the shelf of memory and wish were still whole. A relationship that changed. A time of life that ended. A version of ourselves that we can no longer be. These are real losses, and they deserve tenderness. We do not need to pretend they do not matter. But the clay is still wet. That is the invitation. However much has been lost, however much has changed, the present moment is still here, still soft, still willing, still waiting for your hands. The Buddha put it simply when he said, "The past is already gone. The future is not yet here. There is only one moment for you to live, and that is the present moment." Quote, not as a command, not as pressure, just as a gentle reminder of where you actually are, where you have always been, where, in fact, you can never leave, no matter how far the mind travels. You are always, always here. And so tonight, as you rest here, you might notice that the mind wants to travel. That is what minds do. They are wonderful travelers. They can visit yesterday in an instant. They can leap to next week in the space between two breaths. And that is fine. There is nothing wrong with a mind that wanders. It is not a flaw. It is simply what minds do, the way rivers flow and birds fly and winds blow. It is their nature. But you can also notice, gently, when a thought is asking you to leave, when a memory from the day rises up and says, "Come with me, come back to this moment, relive it, examine it, worry about it." You do not have to follow. You can simply notice the invitation and choose to stay here. Not with force, not with effort. Just with a quiet, kind preference for where you actually are. Like the fisherman who learned to let the old things flow past. Like the potter who remembered that the clay was still wet. Like the person on retreat who discovered that peace was still in the room, even after they had wandered away from it. The river is always flowing. It will always carry things downstream. Old joys, old sorrows, old conversations, old days. You do not have to catch them all. You can let them pass. You can let tonight be tonight. You can let this breath be this breath. And in the morning, the river will still be there, fresh and new and full of life. But that is tomorrow's river. Tonight, there is only this one, this quiet current, this gentle moment, and that is enough. Let us pause here for a moment. Let the day settle, like silt falling gently to the bottom of a still pond. And whenever you are ready, we will go on together. In the Zen tradition, there is a story about a traveler who arrived at a small, bare monastery high in the hills. The buildings were old and simple. The garden was mostly stones and moss. The monks owned very little. There was no gold on the altar, no silk on the cushions, no fine paintings on the walls. The traveler looked around and said, with some concern, "You have nothing here." The abbot, an elderly teacher with a calm face, looked at the traveler and then looked out the window. It was evening. The sky was turning from gold to violet. A cool wind carried the scent of pine through the open door. Somewhere in the distance, a bell was ringing. "We have the moon," the abbot said. "We have the wind. And we have the morning." The traveler did not know what to say to this. He had come expecting wisdom of a grand and complicated kind. He had imagined scrolls and ancient texts, perhaps a secret teaching, perhaps a technique that would transform his understanding. Instead, he was being told about the wind. He stayed 3 days at the monastery. The monks rose early, sat in silence, tended the garden, cooked simple meals, and went to sleep when the sky grew dark. Nothing remarkable happened. No lectures, no ceremonies, no revelations. And yet by the end of the 3 days, the traveler felt lighter than he had felt in years. On the morning he was leaving, he asked the abbot, "I came here looking for something, and I did not find it. And yet I feel as though I have found something." "What happened?" The abbot smiled. "Perhaps you did not find anything," he said. "Perhaps you simply put something down." Later that night, lying on a thin mat in the guest room, listening to the wind move through the pines outside his window, the traveler felt something he had not felt in a very long time. He felt that nothing was missing. Not because everything had been provided, but because so little stood between him and the world that he could actually feel it. The moon through the window, the cool air on his face, the simple sound of breathing, the soft weight of the blanket, everything ordinary, everything enough. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. A monastery that lasts for centuries and a monastery that stands for a single generation are both whole monasteries. The abbot with the moon and the wind knew this. He did not need more time, more possessions, more of anything in order to be complete. This moment, with its wind and its moonlight, was already the whole thing. This brings us to one of the most surprising ideas in all of Buddhist teaching. It is an idea that sounds, at first, like it cannot possibly be true. And yet the more you sit with it, the more it begins to make a quiet, undeniable kind of sense. The idea is this: what if having enough does not come from getting more? What if it comes from letting go? Now, this is a strange thing to say. Everything we have been taught suggests the opposite. From the time we are very young, the message is clear. If you want to feel secure, acquire security. If you want to feel successful, acquire success. If you want to feel loved, find someone to love you. If you want to be happy, get the things that will make you happy. More is more. That is the logic we have all been raised on. And there is a kind of truth to it, up to a point. We all need certain things: food, shelter, warmth, connection. The Buddha himself was careful about this. He did not teach that material needs are unimportant. He fed his students. He made sure they had robes and shelter. He understood that a hungry body makes for a restless mind. But beyond the basic needs, something curious happens. The more we acquire, the more we seem to need. The finish line moves. You get the thing you thought would bring peace, and for a little while, it does. And then a new wanting arises. A new gap opens up. A new "if only" appears on the horizon. And you begin to wonder, is there an end to this? Is there a point at which you will finally have enough? It is like trying to fill a cup that has a hole in the bottom. You keep pouring, and the water keeps draining, and the cup never seems to stay full. Not because there is not enough water, but because the cup cannot hold it. And perhaps the solution is not to pour faster, but to look at the cup. What if the cup is not broken? What if the hole is actually the grasping itself, the relentless need for more? What if, when the grasping softens, the cup holds just fine? There is a verse from the ancient Buddhist texts that says, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." It is a teaching that has been passed down for over 2,000 years, and it has lasted so long not because it is clever, but because it is true. Not true in a way that denies real needs, but true in the way that a deep well is true. You keep drawing from it, and it keeps offering fresh water. The Zen teachers had a gentle way of pointing at this. They would ask, "What do you have to let go of in order to feel full?" It is a strange question. Our habit is to ask the opposite. What do I need to get in order to feel full? But the teachers were suggesting that fullness might already be here, underneath all the grasping, the way a clear sky is always behind the clouds. You do not create the sky by pushing the clouds away. You simply notice that the sky was there all along, once the clouds have thinned. Think of your hands. When they are clenched around something, holding tight, they cannot receive anything new. They are full, yes, but full of effort, full of tension. And the thing they are holding so tightly, often it is not even something they need. Often it is a worry, or a demand, or an old idea about how things should be. And yet the hands keep gripping, because letting go feels like losing something. But when you open your hands, even just a little, something shifts. There is air between the fingers. There is space. And in that space, there is room for whatever wants to come. A gift, a breeze, the hand of another person, the feel of warm earth or cool water, or nothing at all, just the openness itself, which turns out to be its own kind of richness. The Buddha once said, "If you let go a little, you will have a little happiness. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of happiness. If you let go completely, you will be free." He was not talking about giving away your possessions or abandoning your life. He was talking about the inner grip, the way the mind holds on to its stories, its fears, its certainties, and in holding so tightly, misses the abundance that is already here. Let us explore this through a story. There was a gardener who tended a large plot of land at the edge of a village. The soil was rich and dark, the water supply was good, and the gardener was hard-working. Every year, they planted more. vegetables in neat rows, herbs along the borders, fruit trees in the corners, flowers between the paths, berry bushes along the fences. Each spring, the gardener would look at the plot and think, there is still room. And they would plant something new. Squash here, beans there, a row of sunflowers along the south wall, maybe some gourds, and another fruit tree, a small one, squeezed into the last open corner. The garden grew fuller and fuller. From the road, it looked abundant. Visitors would stop and say, "What a magnificent garden you have." But the gardener knew something the visitors did not. Underneath the appearance of abundance, the garden was struggling. The plants were crowded so tightly together that their roots competed for water. The tall ones blocked the light from the short ones. The soil, asked to feed so many mouths, was growing thin and tired. The fruit trees produced smaller and smaller fruit each year. The herbs had lost their fragrance. The flowers bloomed, but weakly, and not for long. The gardener worked harder. They watered more, weeded more, added more compost. But no amount of effort could overcome the basic problem. There was simply too much in too little space. The garden was full, but nothing in it was thriving. One day, an old neighbor came to visit. This neighbor had a garden too, a much smaller one, just a few beds and a single tree. But everything in that garden was extraordinary. The tomatoes were heavy and red. The herbs were fragrant enough to smell from the road. The tree was thick with blossoms every spring and heavy with fruit every autumn. The gardener asked, "How do you do it? My garden is 3 times the size of yours, and yet yours produces more." The neighbor smiled. "May I make a suggestion?" she said. "It will sound wrong to you, but try it anyway." "Of course," the gardener said. "Pull half of it out." The gardener stared. "Half, give the remaining plants room to breathe, room to grow, room to reach their roots deep into the soil. Right now, everything in your garden is starving because everything is competing with everything else. If you make space, what remains will flourish." "But I worked so hard to plant all of this," the gardener said. "Every seed was chosen with care. Every tree was planted with hope. How can I just pull them out?" The neighbor nodded. She understood. "I know," she said. "It feels like giving up. It feels like moving backward. But think of it this way. You are not taking away from the garden. You are giving it the one thing it does not have: space." The gardener sat with this for several days. She walked through her crowded rows and looked at the plants that were struggling, the thin stalks, the pale leaves, the flowers that barely opened. She could see what the neighbor meant, but the thought of removing anything still felt like a kind of loss. And then, one morning, she understood something. She was not keeping all these plants because they were thriving. She was keeping them because letting go felt like failure. She was holding on, not out of love for the garden, but out of fear of having less. And that realization, quiet as it was, changed everything. That spring, she pulled out half the plants. She removed the extra fruit trees. She cleared the crowded rows. She left wide, open spaces between what remained. It felt strange. The garden looked bare. The gardener felt a twinge of loss every time they looked at the empty spaces. But then something happened. Slowly at first, and then unmistakably. The remaining plants, given room, began to grow as they had never grown before. The tomatoes swelled, heavy on the vine, warm in the afternoon sun. The herbs grew thick and tall and filled the air with scent, so that you could smell the basil and the thyme from all the way down the path. The single remaining fruit tree, no longer competing for light and water, produced more fruit that summer than all the crowded trees had produced together the year before. Its branches bent low with the weight of it, and the gardener had to place wooden supports under them to keep them from touching the ground. And something else happened, something the gardener had not expected. Because there was less to tend, there was more time to enjoy. The gardener found herself sitting in the garden in the evenings, not working, just sitting, watching the light change on the leaves, listening to the bees move from flower to flower, feeling the warmth of the soil through the soles of her feet. She had been so busy filling the garden that she had never actually been in it. Not like this. Not with this kind of quiet attention. The garden was half the size, and it was, for the first time, truly abundant. Not because of what it had, but because of what it no longer carried. Space had become its greatest gift. There is a question here that is worth sitting with, gently, the way you might sit with a cup of warm tea. What do we have to let go of in order to feel full? It sounds like a riddle, but it is not. It is something we have all experienced, in small ways, even if we did not recognize it at the time. Think of a time when you stopped trying so hard in a conversation, and the conversation suddenly became real. Something loosened between you, and you both started saying what you actually meant, instead of what you thought you should say. Or a time when you gave up trying to impress someone, and they liked you more because they were finally meeting you instead of the version of you that was performing. Or a time when you stopped worrying about whether a meal was perfect and simply enjoyed eating it, tasting the warmth, the flavor, the simple goodness of food shared with someone you care about. In each of these moments, you let something go. Some effort, some striving, some need for things to be a particular way. And in the space that opened up, something natural and warm flowed in. Not because you went and found it, but because it was already there, waiting for you to stop crowding it out. Like the gardener's plants, waiting for room to grow. The Buddha taught that some of the richest qualities in life, kindness, generosity, compassion, joy, these are not scarce resources. They do not run out when you share them. In fact, they grow. The more kindness you offer, the more kindness there seems to be. The more generosity you practice, the more generous life feels. These are what we might call abundant qualities. They do not obey the logic of scarcity. They obey a different, gentler logic altogether. Consider kindness for a moment. When you offer a small kindness to someone, a warm word, a moment of patience, a willingness to listen, do you have less kindness afterward? Or do you somehow have more? Most people, when they think about it honestly, find that kindness grows with use. It is like a well that refills itself. The more you draw from it, the deeper it becomes. The same is true of love in its most spacious form. Not the grasping kind of love that worries about whether there is enough to go around, but the kind the Buddhist tradition calls loving kindness, a warmth that does not depend on being returned, a goodwill that radiates outward the way a candle radiates light, without choosing whom to shine on. This kind of love is boundless. It does not diminish when it is shared. It is not a scarce commodity. It is, in its truest form, inexhaustible. And this is the quiet secret at the heart of the teaching about letting go. When you release the things that feel scarce, the grasping, the competing, the constant measuring of whether you have enough. What remains are the things that are abundant. Presence, warmth, the ability to notice beauty, the willingness to be kind. These have always been here. They were just hidden beneath the pile of things you thought you needed. And so the question becomes, what if we built our inner life around these abundant qualities rather than around the things that feel scarce? What if, instead of accumulating more, we practiced letting go of what crowds out the fullness that is already here? There is an old folk tale, told in many traditions across many lands, that speaks to this beautifully. It is one of those stories that sounds simple but grows deeper the more you sit with it. A farmer lived on the edge of a wide, rolling plain. He had a small house with a thatched roof, a small plot of land where he grew grain, and one horse. The horse helped him plow the field, carried his goods to market, and was, in many ways, the center of his livelihood. The farmer was not wealthy, but he was steady. He woke each morning, tended his land, and slept well at night. One morning, the farmer woke to find that the horse had run away. The gate was open, the rope was hanging loose, and the horse was gone. Just like that. His neighbors came by that day, gathering at his fence the way people do when something unfortunate has happened to someone else. "What terrible luck," they said, shaking their heads. "Your horse is gone. How will you manage?" "This is a disaster." The farmer looked at them calmly and said, "Perhaps." The neighbors exchanged glances. What a strange thing to say. Of course, it was a disaster. Anyone could see that. A week later, the horse returned, and it did not come alone. It brought with it 3 wild horses from the plains, strong and beautiful, their manes tangled with wind and grass. The neighbors returned, this time with very different expressions. "What wonderful luck," they said, beaming. "Now you have 4 horses. You must be the richest man in the village." The farmer said, "Perhaps." Again, the neighbors looked at each other. What did he mean, perhaps? He had 4 horses. That was clearly wonderful. The next week, the farmer's son was trying to ride one of the wild horses. The horse was spirited and unpredictable, and it threw the young man. He hurt his leg badly and would not be able to work in the fields for many weeks. The neighbors came again, their faces long. "What terrible luck," they said. "Your son is injured. What will you do?" "Perhaps," the farmer said. Not long after, officers came to the village looking for young men to join in a long and difficult labor far from home. Every young man in the village was taken, but the farmer's son, because of his injured leg, was passed over. He stayed home, safe and warm, and in time, he healed fully. The neighbors did not come to comment this time. They were beginning to understand something, though they might not have been able to put it into words. The farmer had not done anything special. He had not been cleverer than his neighbors, or luckier, or more spiritual. He had simply held each moment, each turn of fortune, with open hands. He did not grasp the good things and say, "This must last forever." He did not push away the difficult things and say, "This must not be." He simply met each day as it came and said, "Perhaps," which is really just another way of saying, "I do not know what this means yet. I will wait and see. I will stay here, in this moment, and not leap ahead into conclusions." There is a phrase in the Zen tradition, "Not knowing is most intimate." It sounds puzzling at first. We usually think that knowing is better than not knowing. We want answers. We want certainty. We want to stand on solid ground and say, this is how it is. But what the teachers were pointing at is this. When you let go of your certainty about how things should be, you come closer to how things actually are. And how things actually are, moment by moment, is always richer and more alive than any story you could tell about it. The neighbors saw a horse run away and immediately made it into a story. This is bad. They saw 3 horses arrive and made it into a different story. This is good. They lived inside their stories, bouncing between good luck and bad luck, never quite at peace with either one. The farmer lived in the moment itself, not the story about the moment. And the moment, it turns out, is much roomier than any story. It has space for everything. The good and the difficult, the expected and the surprising, the loss and the return. Open hands can hold all of it. Clenched fists can only hold what they are already gripping. The farmer was not wise because he knew the future. He was wise because he did not pretend to. And in that not knowing, his hands stayed open. And open hands, it turns out, can hold a great deal more than clenched ones. Just to be alive is enough. We have been exploring this idea from different angles tonight, and here, in this question of letting go, it takes on yet another color. What if happiness is not something we build? What if it is something we uncover? The way you might clear away fallen leaves from a garden path and discover that the path was there all along, solid and waiting underneath. There is a teaching in the Buddhist tradition that happiness, in its deepest form, is a natural quality of the heart. It is not something we manufacture or earn or achieve. It is not a reward for good behavior or the result of getting everything right. It is more like the warmth of the sun. It is always shining. But sometimes there are so many clouds, so many layers of worry and wanting and striving that we cannot feel it. And what are these clouds made of? Often, they are made of holding on to how things should be, holding on to who we think we are, holding on to old grievances, old fears, old ideas about what we need in order to be happy. Each one is not so heavy on its own, but together, they can block out quite a lot of light. There is a beautiful image sometimes used in the Buddhist teachings. It is the image of a pool of water. When the water is stirred up, it is cloudy and you cannot see the bottom. But when the stirring stops, when the mud is allowed to settle, the water becomes clear, all on its own. You do not have to add clarity to it. You simply have to stop disturbing it. The same may be true of the heart. You do not have to add happiness to it. You simply have to stop stirring up all the things that cloud it. And how do you stop stirring? By letting go. Not letting go of life, or of the people you love, or of the things that matter, but letting go of the grip, the tightness, the insistence that things must be different before you are allowed to be at peace. What if you could set some of that down? Not all of it. Not forever. Just a little. Just for tonight. The abbot in his bare monastery had so little, and yet he had the moon, the wind, and the morning. And that was enough. Perhaps not because he was a special kind of person, perhaps simply because, with so little in the way, he could feel what was already there. The way you can feel the warmth of a fire more clearly when you step out of the cold. Tonight, resting here, you too have the quiet. You have the breath. You have this gentle moment. And perhaps, if some of the holding softens, even a little, you might feel what has been here all along, waiting, patient, warm. Let us pause here for a moment. You might notice if there is anything you are holding tightly tonight. A thought, a worry, a plan, an expectation. You do not have to put it down. Just notice the holding. And whenever you are ready, we will continue together. So far tonight, we have been resting with a gentle idea. The idea that just to be alive is enough. And we have explored it in the quiet places, under the stars, beside the river, in the garden where the plants finally had room to breathe. We have met it in the softness of a still evening and in the open hands of a farmer who said, "Perhaps," but there is a question that has been waiting patiently at the edge of all this softness. A question you may have already felt stirring, quietly, in the background. What about the hard days? It is one thing to feel that life is enough when the evening is calm and the sky is wide and everything is peaceful. Most of us have tasted that feeling, at least for a few breaths. But what about the days that are not peaceful? What about the mornings that arrive heavy, when the body aches or the heart feels full of something you cannot quite name? What about the seasons that bring uncertainty, when the ground beneath you does not feel as solid as it once did? Is this teaching only for the good times? Is enough something you can only feel when things are going well? This is an honest question, and it deserves an honest, tender answer. Because if just to be alive is enough, only works on the easy days, then it is not much of a teaching at all. It is more like a pleasant thought you hang on the wall and admire when the sun is shining. But the old Zen teachers did not offer pleasant thoughts. They offered something more durable than that. Something that could hold the full weight of a human life, the bright parts and the dim parts alike. Let us turn to a story that has lived at the heart of the Zen tradition for over 1,000 years. It is one of the most beloved stories in all of Zen, and it is only a few words long. But those few words hold something vast. Long ago, in a monastery tucked into the hills where the mist gathered each morning like a soft grey blanket, there was a great Zen teacher. He was very old, and he had been teaching for many, many years. Students traveled great distances to sit with him, crossing rivers and climbing mountain paths to reach the monastery gate. They came to learn from his stillness, to receive whatever he had to offer. He was known not for complicated teachings, but for a kind of radiant simplicity. Being near him was, people said, like sitting beside a warm fire on a cold evening. You did not need to understand anything. You just felt warmer. He taught in the old way, not through lectures, but through presence. Through the way he poured tea. Through the way he listened. Through the unhurried way he moved from one room to another, as though each step were a complete journey in itself. As the years went on, this teacher's body began to grow tired. He moved more slowly. He rested more often. He spent long afternoons sitting by the window, watching the pine trees sway. The students noticed, and they began to worry. Some of them whispered among themselves. Others simply sat with him more quietly, more carefully, as if trying to hold on to every remaining moment. One day, a student came to visit. He sat down beside the old teacher and asked, with great gentleness, "How are you, teacher?" And the teacher looked at him and said, simply, "Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha." That was all. No explanation. No reassurance. No complaint. just those few quiet words. The student sat with them. The room was still. Outside, a bird sang a single clear note. Now, to understand what this means, there is a small piece of context that helps. In the old Buddhist texts, there is mention of a sun-faced Buddha who lives for a very long time, an almost unimaginable span of years. And there is a moon-faced Buddha who lives for just a single day and a single night. So when the teacher said, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, he was saying something like this: whether my life stretches on for many more years, or whether this is my last season, it is all the same. The sun-faced Buddha is complete. The moon-faced Buddha is also complete. A long life is whole. A short time is also whole. 1,000 bright mornings are whole. A single quiet evening is also whole. Each moment is the full thing, not a piece of something, not a fraction, but the whole. He was not pretending that difficulty is pleasant. He was not putting on a brave face. He was not saying, "I am fine," when he was not fine. He was doing something much more honest than that. He was resting in something deeper than the circumstances. He was resting in the simple fact of being alive right now and finding that this, whatever shape it takes, is enough. The student did not ask any more questions. There was nothing more to ask. The teacher had answered not with philosophy but with his whole being. Here I am. This is the day I have been given. Sun-faced or moon-faced, it is my day, and I am here for it. There is a saying sometimes attributed to the old teachers: every day is a good day. It does not mean that every day is pleasant. It does not mean that hardship is an illusion. It means that every day, by virtue of being a day you are alive, is worthy, is real, is complete. The good day is a good day. The hard day is also a good day, because you are in it, and your presence in it is what makes it whole. This is perhaps the deepest layer of the teaching we have been sitting with tonight. We tend to measure our lives by how much of them we have, how many years, how many experiences, how many things accomplished, places visited, milestones reached. We think of a full life as a long life, rich with events, and a short time, or a limited time, or a time marked by difficulty, we think of as somehow less, as though life were a cup, and the longer you live, the more it fills, and only a full cup counts. But the koan says something quite different. It says, the moon-faced Buddha lived for a single day, and that single day was not a fraction of a life. It was a whole life. Complete, nothing missing, not because a day is a long time, but because a day, fully inhabited, fully present, is the whole thing, the whole awakening, the whole Buddha. This is what changes everything. It is not about being at peace with whatever happens. It is about understanding that this moment, right now, is not a prelude to some future moment when things will be complete. This moment is already complete. You are not waiting for your life to begin. It has already begun. It is already here, and it is whole. Think of it this way. A single note of music does not need to become a symphony in order to be real. A single note, struck clearly and fully, contains everything that music is. The vibration is whole. The beauty is whole. It does not need the next note in order to be complete. And your life, right now, tonight, is like that note. It may be one note in a longer piece, or it may be a note standing on its own. Either way, it is whole. Either way, it is music. There is a verse from the Buddhist tradition that touches this gently. In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. It is the discovery that something inside us does not depend on duration or circumstance. Something complete, something warm, something that is here whether this is the first day of a long journey or the last. Not loud, not dramatic, just present, like the warmth beneath the earth that the frost can never quite reach. You have felt this, perhaps in a small way, on a day that you thought was insignificant, and yet something about it felt strangely full. A quiet afternoon, an unremarkable evening. Nothing happened, and yet everything was there. That feeling was not an illusion. It was the truth. That ordinary afternoon was a complete life, seen from the inside. And you were the sun-faced Buddha and the moon-faced Buddha at once, without even knowing it. Let us explore a story about someone who discovered this in an unexpected way. There was a person who had spent many years living with worry. Not the ordinary kind of worry that comes and goes with the weather, but a deep, persistent kind that colored everything. It was the first thing they felt in the morning and the last thing they felt at night. They worried about their health. They worried about their family. They worried about things that might happen next month, next year, in some distant future they could not control. Every morning, they woke with a small knot of unease in their chest, and every evening, they went to sleep with it still there. They tried many things to ease it. They read books about calm. They talked to friends. They took long walks along quiet roads, hoping the rhythm of their footsteps would settle the rhythm of their mind. And some of these things helped for a while, but the worry always returned, patient and familiar, like a vine that keeps growing back no matter how many times you trim it. The strange thing was, the worry was almost entirely about the future. It was almost never about right now. Right now, in this moment, things were usually fine. The sun was shining, or the rain was falling gently, or dinner was cooking on the stove, or a friend was laughing about something. Right now was almost always manageable, but the mind kept leaping ahead, scanning the horizon for storms, and every cloud it found became the beginning of a catastrophe. Have you noticed this in your own life? That the present moment is almost always more livable than the stories the mind tells about it. That the future the mind worries about is almost never the future that actually arrives. We spend so much of our energy living in imagined tomorrows, and the real tomorrow, when it comes, is usually something we could not have predicted anyway. This person knew this, in a way. They had read about presence, about mindfulness, about the importance of being here. But knowing it in the mind is very different from knowing it in the body. The mind can understand a teaching and still ignore it. It is a bit like knowing that the water in the lake is warm and still standing on the shore, shivering, afraid to go in. And then, one day, something they had been worrying about for a long time actually happened. They received some difficult news about their health. It was not easy news. It was the kind of news that changes the shape of your days. The kind that makes you look at the calendar differently and at the faces of the people you love more carefully. And here is the surprising part. The worry stopped. Not all at once, and not because the news was good. It was not good. But something inside them shifted in a way they had never expected. For years, they had been living in a kind of war with the future, constantly bracing, constantly preparing for something terrible that might happen. And now, the thing they had been bracing for was here. It was not in the future anymore. It was the present. And the present, it turned out, was manageable. It was real and solid, and you could stand on it. It was not pleasant. It was not what they would have chosen, but it was real. And there was something almost restful about that. The long, exhausting battle with what if was over. They no longer had to imagine the worst, because they were already in it, and they were still here. Still breathing. Still able to feel the sunlight on their face, the coolness of morning air, the warmth of a cup of tea in their hands. Still able to hear birdsong and feel the soft weight of a blanket and taste the sweetness of a ripe pear. A friend came to visit one afternoon. The friend was nervous, unsure what to say, expecting to find someone in distress. They had prepared comforting words, rehearsed gentle phrases on the walk over. Instead, they found something unexpected. The person was sitting in a chair by the window, watching the light move across the floor. They were calm, not in a forced way, not in a brave way, but in a genuine, settled way. Like someone who has been walking uphill for a very long time and has finally reached level ground. "How are you?" the friend asked carefully. The person thought about it for a moment. A real moment. Not the polite pause before a polite answer, but a genuine consideration. "You know," they said, "I think I am more at peace now than I have been in years." The friend did not understand this. It did not make sense. How could someone be at peace when life had just become so much harder? But the person understood. They had spent so many years running from a fear that the fear itself had become more exhausting than the thing they feared. The worry had taken more from them than the reality ever could. And now that the reality was here, there was nothing left to run from. There was only this moment, this room, this afternoon light falling through the window in long warm strips, this breath. "I spent so many years being afraid of this," the person said quietly. "And now that it is here, I realize that right now is all I ever had. And right now is enough." The friends sat with this. They did not fully understand it, but they could feel its truth in the room, the way you can feel warmth from a fire even before you see the flames. The Buddha once said, "There is no fear for one whose mind is not filled with desires." This person had lost their greatest desire, the desire for things to be different than they were, and in losing it, they had found a kind of freedom they had never known was possible. Not the freedom of getting what you want, but the freedom of no longer needing things to be other than they are. The freedom of being fully, completely here. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. Whether this chapter of life stretches on for many years or for just this afternoon, it is a whole chapter. And this person, sitting in their chair by the window, watching the light move across the floor, was living a complete life. Not a diminished one, not a partial one, a complete one. There is something very tender about this story. It is not a story about things working out. It is not a story about someone getting better, or finding a cure, or receiving good news. It is a story about someone discovering that peace was never in the future at all. It was always in the present. It was always right here, in this room, in this breath, in this cup of tea held between two warm hands. We spend so much of our lives waiting for peace, waiting for the right conditions, waiting for the storm to pass, the problem to resolve, the worry to lift. And there is nothing wrong with hoping for good things. But the teaching gently asks, what if you did not have to wait? What if the peace you are looking for is already available, not in the future, not in some better version of your life, but right here, in this version, the one you are actually living? The old teachers called this everyday mind. It is the mind that does not require special circumstances. It does not need the retreat or the mountain or the perfect evening. It finds peace in the ordinary, in the worn and familiar, in whatever is happening right now. Everyday mind chops vegetables and washes dishes and walks to the market and sits with a friend, and in all of these things, it is at rest. Not because the activities are restful, but because the mind has stopped looking elsewhere for what it already has. There is another story, quieter than the last, that comes from the same spirit. It is a story about sitting with someone and what that can mean. A teacher received word that someone in a nearby village was going through a time of deep sorrow. They had lost someone dear to them, and the grief was very fresh, like a wound that has not yet had time to begin healing. The teacher decided to visit, not to offer advice or wisdom, just to be there. Sometimes, the most important thing one person can do for another is simply to show up and stay. When the teacher arrived, they found the person sitting in a small garden behind their house. It was late afternoon. The light was warm and golden, the way it gets when the sun is low and everything it touches seems to glow from within. There were flowers along the edges of the garden, purple and white and soft yellow. A small stone path wound between the beds, and the sound of birds was everywhere, clear and bright and unhurried, the way birdsong always is, indifferent to our sorrows, continuing its ancient conversation with the sky. The teacher sat down beside the person on a simple wooden bench. They did not speak right away. There is an old tradition in many contemplative paths of simply being with someone, not trying to fix anything, not offering advice or consolation, not filling the silence with words that, however well-meaning, cannot reach the place where grief lives. Just sitting together, sharing the weight of the moment by being willing to be inside it. And so they sat. The grief was there. It was not hidden. It was as present in the garden as the flowers and the birdsong and the warm light. The teacher did not try to make it go away. They simply let it be there, alongside everything else, alongside the smell of earth and blossoms, alongside the feeling of the bench beneath them, solid and worn, alongside the slow golden turning of the afternoon. Minutes passed, maybe many minutes. Neither of them counted, and after a while something remarkable happened. Not a miracle, not a sudden lifting of sorrow, just a quiet widening. The person who was grieving looked up at the sky. They noticed the clouds moving slowly overhead, soft and white against the blue. They felt the warmth of the sun on their arms. They heard a bee moving from flower to flower, a low, contented hum. And for just a moment, without the grief going anywhere, without anything being fixed or resolved, they also felt something else. They felt alive. Not happy, not relieved, but alive. Fully, palpably alive. As though the very fact of being here, in this garden, in this light, with this other person beside them, was itself a kind of gift. Not the gift they would have asked for, but a gift nonetheless. The teacher felt it too. Sitting there in that garden, with the light fading slowly and the birds still singing their patient songs, there was a fullness to the moment that had nothing to do with whether things were going well or badly. It was more basic than that, more ancient, like the feeling of solid ground beneath your feet, which is there on good days and difficult days alike. Like the feeling of breath in your lungs, which does not ask whether you are happy or sad before it arrives. Just to be alive, even in sorrow, even in the quiet, heavy tenderness of loss. Even here, enough. Not because the sorrow does not matter. It matters deeply. But because this moment, even this one, is whole. And two people sitting together in it, sharing its weight and its beauty, is one of the oldest and most sacred things human beings can do. After a long time, the person said, quietly, "Thank you for sitting with me." The teacher said, "Thank you for letting me." And they sat a little while longer. The light turned from gold to rose. The birds settled into the trees for the evening. The garden held them both, gently, the way the earth holds everything, without asking how long it will stay, without asking whether it has earned its place. Just holding, just being, just enough. What these stories share is something the old Zen teachers understood deeply, that a life does not need to be long in order to be whole, and a moment does not need to be perfect in order to be complete. The sun-faced Buddha and the moon-faced Buddha are not two different experiences of life, one good and one bad. They are two different durations of the same completeness. One lives for ages. One lives for a day. And the teaching is that the one who lives for a day did not receive less, did not get a smaller portion, did not miss out. Because one day, fully lived, fully present, fully here, is the whole thing. And this is what connects the koan to everything we have explored tonight. The person who stopped worrying did not find peace because their circumstances improved. They found peace because they finally arrived in the present moment, fully, without reservation. The teacher in the garden did not find fullness because the sorrow lifted. They found fullness because they were willing to be completely present for what was here, whatever it was, for however long they had. That is what makes a life whole. Not its length, not its ease, but the completeness of your presence inside it. Whether you have decades ahead of you or only this single evening, the question is the same. Are you here for it? Are you willing to inhabit this moment as though it were a complete life? Because it is. The teaching does not ask you to stop being human. It does not ask you to stop wanting things to go well or hoping for more time. It only asks, can you recognize that this moment, right now, is not a fragment? It is the whole thing, and you are inside it. And that is enough. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, both whole, both here, both complete, not because of how long they last, but because of how fully they are lived. Let us pause here for a moment. There is no need to carry any of this forward. Just rest with whatever is here, and whenever you are ready, we will continue together. There is an old Zen saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It is a funny little teaching. You might expect that after some great awakening, life would look completely different. New colors, new sounds, a different world. But the Zen teachers keep pointing us back to the same place. The kitchen, the garden, the walk to the well, the sound of rain on the roof, the ordinary, unremarkable moments that make up most of a human life. This is one of the things that makes Zen Buddhism so different from what many people expect. There is no promise of a life that is suddenly bathed in golden light. There is no dramatic moment where the heavens open and everything changes. Instead, there is this, the same life you have always been living, but seen with fresh eyes. The same cup of tea, but tasted for the first time. The same walk to the corner, but noticed, really noticed, as if it matters. Because it does. And here is the question this raises, gently, for all of us. Can the teaching we have been sitting with tonight live in the ordinary? Not just in the starlit evenings and the quiet retreats and the deep, still moments of insight, but in the noise, in the busyness, in the morning rush and the long afternoon and the pile of things that need doing before the day is done. Can, just to be alive is enough, survive contact with a Monday morning? Let us explore a story. A busy person, feeling overwhelmed by the pace of their life, went to visit a teacher. They had heard that this teacher could help people find peace, and peace was what they needed. Badly. They sat down across from the teacher and said, "Right away, I have no time for stillness. I have too many responsibilities. My days are full from the moment I wake up to the moment I fall asleep. I have people depending on me. I have work that cannot wait. I barely have time to eat, let alone sit and be quiet." The teacher listened. Then, without saying anything, the teacher reached for the teapot and began to pour tea into the person's cup. The tea rose to the brim, and the teacher kept pouring. The tea spilled over the edge, across the saucer, and onto the table, a thin stream of golden liquid pooling on the wood. "Stop," the person said. "The cup is full. It is overflowing. You cannot pour any more in." The teacher set down the teapot and smiled. "Yes," the teacher said. "You are right. The cup is full. And yet, notice, the cup has not changed. It is the same cup it has always been. It has always been enough to hold exactly what it was meant to hold." The person frowned. "I do not understand. Your life is very full," the teacher said. "I believe you. But the cup, your life, is not the problem. The cup is fine. The problem is that you keep pouring. You keep adding more, agreeing to more, worrying about more, carrying more, until everything spills over and you feel like you are drowning. But the cup itself has always been sufficient. It is the pouring that is exhausting you, not the cup." The person sat with this. It was not what they had expected to hear. They had expected a technique, a practice, a secret method for fitting more peace into an already overcrowded schedule. Perhaps a special breathing exercise that only takes 3 minutes, or a way to meditate while commuting. Instead, they were being told something simpler and stranger. You do not need more room. You need to stop filling the room you already have. "But how?" the person asked. "Everything on my plate is important. I cannot just stop." The teacher nodded. "I am not asking you to stop," the teacher said. "I am asking you to notice something. When you wash the dishes tonight, are you washing the dishes? Or are you washing the dishes while also planning tomorrow, replaying yesterday, and worrying about next week?" The person thought about this. They could not remember the last time they had done only one thing. "The cup overflows," the teacher said, "not because your life has too many things in it. It overflows because your mind adds 10 things to every one thing you do. You are not living one life. You are living several lives at once, all of them in your head, and only one of them in your hands. The person went home that evening, and when they washed the dishes, just as an experiment, they tried something. They washed the dishes. That was all. They felt the warm water on their skin. They noticed the smooth surface of each plate. They listened to the quiet sound of the sponge on the ceramic. They did not plan. They did not review. They did not mentally compose any emails or rehearse any conversations. And something surprising happened. The task, which usually felt like a chore, felt almost pleasant. Not because the dishes had changed, but because the person was finally there for them. And being there, it turned out, was restful. Being there was enough. This is one of the most practical aspects of the teaching we have been exploring tonight. Just to be alive is enough. But what does that mean when life is full and loud and demanding? It does not mean we should do less, necessarily. Some of us have real responsibilities that cannot be set aside. Children who need feeding, work that pays the bills, people who depend on us for care and attention. The Buddhist teaching is not a call to abandon these things. The Buddha himself spent decades actively teaching, walking from village to village, caring for his community. He did not sit under a tree for 45 years. He lived a full, engaged, busy life. But there is a difference between a life that is full and a life that is overflowing. A full life can be rich and satisfying, like a cup of tea filled to just the right level, warm in your hands, fragrant, exactly enough. An overflowing life is exhausting because no matter how much you do, it always feels like it is not quite handled. And the difference between the two is not in how much you are doing. It is in how you are meeting what you are doing. There is a way to wash a dish that is just washing a dish. Your hands in the warm water, the smooth surface of the plate, the simple satisfaction of making something clean. And there is a way to wash a dish while also replaying a conversation from this morning, planning dinner for tonight, worrying about a phone call you need to make tomorrow, and judging yourself for not being further ahead in life. The dish is the same dish. The water is the same water. But in one case, you are here, and in the other, you are in 4 places at once, and none of them is the place where you actually are. This is what the teachers mean when they talk about presence. It is not a mystical state. It is not something you need years of training to achieve. It is simply the act of being where you are, fully, instead of being somewhere else. It is, in a way, the most natural thing in the world. Children do it effortlessly. Animals do it without thinking. The cat sitting in a patch of sunlight is not also thinking about what it will have for dinner. It is simply sitting in the sunlight. And it looks, if you watch it carefully, deeply content. The Vietnamese Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, "Wash the dishes to wash the dishes." It sounds absurdly simple, almost too simple to be a teaching. But he meant it with great seriousness, because he understood something that most of us forget. The quality of our attention determines the quality of our life, not the quantity of our experiences, not the number of things we accomplish, but the depth of our presence in whatever we are doing. When you are truly here, doing what you are doing, without adding 10 other things on top of it, something happens. The moment becomes spacious, not because you have more time, but because you have more presence. And presence, it turns out, is what makes a moment feel like enough. You can have an entire free afternoon and feel restless and unsatisfied because your mind is scattered and jumpy. And you can have 5 minutes of washing dishes and feel deeply at peace because you are completely, wholeheartedly there. This is what the old teachers meant when they said that nirvana and samsara are the same place. It is not that suffering and peace are the same thing. It is that the same moment can be experienced as suffering or as peace, depending on how you meet it. The moment itself is neutral. It is just this: the dishes, the water, the evening. But your attention makes it into one thing or another. Scattered attention makes it into a chore. Full attention makes it into a gift. Let us visit a story from the old monastery traditions that brings this to life. A young monk arrived at a monastery hoping to study with the great teacher who lived there. He had traveled a long way, over mountains and through valleys, sleeping in roadside shelters and eating whatever simple food he could find. He was eager to begin. He had read the old texts by candlelight until the pages were soft with use. He had practiced sitting meditation for hours, until his legs ached and his mind grew still as a lake at dawn. He was ready, he felt, for the deepest teachings, for the great silence, for the kind of insight that changes everything. The abbot welcomed him warmly at the gate. They shared a cup of tea together, and the young monk told the abbot about his journey, his studies, his years of preparation. The abbot listened to all of this with great patience, and then he gave the young monk his assignment. "You will work in the kitchen," the abbot said. The young monk's face fell. The kitchen? He had walked across a mountain range to chop vegetables and scrub pots. He wanted to sit in the meditation hall with the senior students, not stand over a stove in a cloud of steam. But the monastery had its ways, and so the monk went to the kitchen. He chopped onions until his eyes watered. He stirred enormous pots of soup that seemed to never be quite done. He washed a seemingly endless parade of bowls, each one looking exactly like the last. The work was repetitive and unglamorous. His back ached from standing. His hands were rough from the hot water. His robe smelled of garlic and wood smoke. Meanwhile, he could hear the faint sound of chanting from the meditation hall, and it made his heart ache with longing. That was where the real practice was happening. That was where the awakening was taking place. And he was here, peeling carrots. After some weeks of this, he could not stand it anymore. He went to the abbot and knelt down and said, "Forgive me, but please, I did not come here to cook. I came here to learn. I came here to awaken. I have been studying for years. Can I not spend my time in the meditation hall instead of the kitchen?" The abbot looked at him with kind, patient eyes. He was not annoyed by the question. In fact, he seemed to have been expecting it. "Tell me," the abbot said, "where do you think awakening lives?" "In the meditation hall," the monk said, without hesitation. "In the silence, in the deep states of concentration, in the teachings of the masters." The abbot smiled gently. "And where else?" The monk paused. He had not considered this. "I do not know," he admitted. "It lives in the kitchen," the abbot said softly. "It lives in the onion you are chopping. It lives in the water you are washing the pot with. It lives in the steam that rises from the soup. It lives in your tired hands. You have been looking for it in a special place, but it does not live in a special place. It lives in every place. You have only to stop leaving." "Stop leaving?" the monk asked. "You are in the kitchen," the abbot said. "But your mind is in the meditation hall. Your body is here, but your heart is somewhere else. And because you are always somewhere else, you cannot feel what is right here. The awakening you are looking for is already happening. You are just too far away to notice. The monk went back to the kitchen, but something had changed. Not the work, which was exactly the same. Onions, soup, bowls, water. But the monk had stopped leaving. He began to pay attention, really pay attention, to the weight of the knife in his hand, how solid it felt, how perfectly balanced, to the sound it made against the wooden cutting board, a steady, rhythmic knocking, almost musical, to the way the onion released its sharp, sweet smell when the blade passed through it, layer after layer, translucent and beautiful. He noticed the warmth of the water on his hands as he washed the dishes. He noticed the smooth curve of each bowl, how it fit in his palm like something made specifically for him to hold. He noticed the steam rising from the soup pot, curling and dissolving into the air, appearing and disappearing, over and over, without any effort at all. He did not add anything to the work. He did not change it, or improve it, or make it more spiritual. He simply stopped being somewhere else while he was doing it. And the kitchen, which had seemed like a prison, became a kind of temple. Not because anything magical happened, but because he was finally there, fully there. And being fully somewhere, it turns out, is its own kind of abundance, its own kind of awakening. There is a Zen saying, when you sit, sit. When you walk, walk. Above all, do not wobble. It means, whatever you are doing, be there for it. Not halfway. Not with one foot in the task and the other in some imagined better place. Just here. Just this. And this, whatever it is, will be enough. There is one more story worth sharing tonight before we begin to wind our way toward rest. It is a quieter story than the last, and it unfolds slowly, the way a season changes. There was a person who had built their whole life around one thing. They were someone who moved through the world with great physical grace and strength. From a young age, their body had been their gift. They could run faster, climb higher, move with more ease and joy than almost anyone around them. And so, naturally, this became who they were. Their days were organized around it. Their friendships grew from it. Their sense of purpose flowed from it. When they moved, they felt alive. When they pushed their limits, they felt most like themselves. Their body was their home. And then, through an unexpected turn of events, that way of being was taken from them. An accident, sudden and uninvited, changed the landscape of their body. The things they had always been able to do, the running, the climbing, the easy grace, they could no longer do. The strength they had relied on, the strength that had been their identity for as long as they could remember, was gone. What followed was a season of real difficulty. Not just physical, though the physical part was hard enough, but something deeper than that. An inner struggle with a question that went to the very center of who they were. Who am I, if I am not this? If the thing that defined me, the thing I was best at, the thing that made me feel most alive, is gone, what is left? What am I without it? For a while, the answer seemed to be, not much. The days were long and frustrating. The things that used to bring joy now brought pain, not because they hurt the body, but because they reminded the person of what they had lost. The world they had known seemed to shrink, and there was a sadness to this that was genuine and real and deserved to be felt. We do not honor anyone by pretending that loss is not hard. It is hard. It is one of the hardest things. But slowly, over time, like a plant pushing up through a crack in stone, something began to emerge. Not all at once. Not dramatically. More like a quiet dawning, a slow change in the quality of the light. Without the old identity to stand on, this person began to notice parts of themselves they had never paid much attention to. A talent for listening, for really hearing what someone else was saying beneath their words. A gift for patience that they had never needed before, because patience is only revealed when you can no longer move fast. A warmth in the way they spoke to others, a gentleness that had always been there but had been overshadowed by the louder, more visible parts of their life. They began to discover that who they were was much larger than what they could do. That the body, as wonderful and capable as it is, was only one room in a very large house. And now that they had been guided out of that one familiar room, they were finding the other rooms for the first time. Some of them were beautiful. Some were quiet and deep, like wells you could draw from and never reach the bottom. Some held a kind of richness they had never imagined, simply because they had never thought to look. They made new friends, different kinds of friends, who valued them for things other than what their body could do. They found that conversations had a depth they had never noticed before, perhaps because they were finally sitting still long enough to listen. They discovered that the world was full of small, quiet pleasures they had been running past for years. The way morning light falls through a window, the taste of bread fresh from the oven, the sound of rain on a roof, the feeling of a warm hand holding theirs. One day, a friend asked them, "Do you miss it? The way things were?" And they thought about it honestly. A real, unhurried thought. "Of course I miss parts of it," they said. "I would be lying if I said I did not. But I would not trade what I have found for what I lost. I was living in one small room and thinking it was the whole house. And now I have found the rest of the house. And it is more beautiful than I could have known. This is not a story about things working out perfectly. Some things do not work out. Some losses are permanent. But it is a story about the surprising spaciousness that can be found when you stop holding so tightly to one version of who you are. When the old story about yourself comes to an end, there is grief, yes. But there is also, sometimes, the quiet discovery that you are bigger than your story. That the self you thought you were was a small and lovely thing, but the self you actually are is vast and gentle and able to hold much more than you imagined. This is what the Zen tradition calls big self, not the self that says, "I am this particular person with these particular abilities and this particular role," but the wider, quieter self that includes all of that and also includes the sky and the sound of the birds and the warmth of a hand on yours and the feeling of being alive in a body that is always changing, always becoming something new. The monk in the kitchen found it. The busy person washing dishes found it. And this person, who had lost the one thing they thought they could not live without, found it too. It was always there. They just needed the old walls to soften before they could see the larger room. Even now, in the most ordinary moment, the teaching of the koan is alive. The sun-faced Buddha lives 1,000 years. The moon-faced Buddha lives a single day. And this moment, this completely ordinary moment of chopping an onion, or washing a dish, or sitting quietly by a window, is a whole life in miniature. Not because it is special, but because you are here for it, fully here. And a moment fully inhabited is the whole thing. It does not need to last longer, or be grander, or lead somewhere important. It is already complete. The kitchen monk discovered this. The busy person at the sink discovered this. And you, resting here tonight, are discovering it too. And the ordinary moment, the truly ordinary moment, holds this completeness with effortless grace. The morning cup of tea holds it. The walk to the door holds it. The sound of your own breathing holds it. There is no moment so small that it cannot contain the whole teaching. That is the miracle of the ordinary. It is not less than the extraordinary. It is the extraordinary, seen up close. The Buddha himself said, "If you cannot find the truth right where you are, where else do you expect to find it? Not on a mountain, not in a temple, not in a perfect life free from trouble. Right here, right where you are standing, right where you are lying, right now. Just to be alive is enough. Not because life gives you everything you want, not because every moment is easy, but because this life, your life, the one you are actually living right now, is already more than you think it is. It already has rooms you have not visited. It already holds a depth you have not touched. It already contains, in its most ordinary moments, a richness that is waiting to be noticed. The monk found it in the kitchen. The busy person found it in a cup of warm water and a clean plate. The person who lost their strength found it in a new kind of gentleness. None of them went anywhere special. None of them achieved anything extraordinary. They simply arrived where they already were. And tonight, resting here, you are closer to it than you have been all day. Because tonight, you are not rushing. You are not planning. You are not adding anything to anything. You are simply here. And here, as the old teachers knew, is the only place where the ordinary reveals itself as extraordinary. The old Zen teachers would remind their students with great gentleness, "You are already home. You have always been home. You have only to notice." And noticing, it turns out, does not take any effort at all. It just takes a willingness to stop for a moment and be here. To let this moment, this ordinary, unremarkable, perfectly good moment, be enough. Let us pause here for a moment. One more chapter to share with you tonight. And whenever you are ready, we will continue together. We have been on a gentle journey together tonight. Through stories and teachings, through starlit skies and quiet gardens, through kitchens and rivers, and the wide open hands of a farmer who said, "Perhaps," we have sat with monks and potters and fishermen. We have watched the sun set over ordinary roads and extraordinary questions. And we have sat with an old teaching that says a single day, fully lived, is a complete life. And now we come to the last stretch of the evening, the quietest part, the part where the fire has burned down to embers and the room is warm and the world outside has grown still. If you are sleepy, that is wonderful. If you are wide awake, that is wonderful too. Wherever you are is the right place to be. There is a phrase in the old Buddhist texts that has stayed with many people across the centuries. It is the title of a short teaching by the Buddha, and depending on how you translate it, it means something like one wonderful night or one auspicious day. In the ancient language, the word for day and night was the same, because they counted time by nights, the way a candle counts its hours by how much wax remains. And so one wonderful night is also one wonderful day, one wonderful turn of the wheel, one complete cycle of light and dark, waking and sleeping, sun and moon, one whole, complete, unrepeatable day. What makes a day wonderful? We might expect the answer to involve something extraordinary. A piece of good news, a beautiful place, a long-awaited reunion, a moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. We might expect that a wonderful day is the kind of day we would choose if we could choose our days the way we choose fruit from a market stall, only the ripest, only the sweetest. But the Buddha's answer is simpler than that, and stranger, and more tender. The one who has a wonderful day, he said, is the one who does not chase after the past or place all their hopes on the future. The one who sees what is here, right now, clearly and fully. The one who does what can be done today, with care and with presence, and does not bargain with tomorrow. He spoke to his students about this on a quiet evening, much like this one. And what he told them was not complicated. He said, "Whoever lives this way, fully present, relentlessly gentle with themselves and with the moment, has truly had a wonderful day. So says the peaceful sage. That is all. No special conditions. No requirement that the day be easy or pleasant or free from difficulty. Just presence. Just this. Just being fully alive for the hours you have been given, however many or few they may be. And that, perhaps, is the most surprising part. You do not have to earn a wonderful day. You do not have to deserve it. You do not have to prepare for it or wait for the right circumstances to line up. You simply have to be here for it. The wonderful night is not the night when everything goes right. It is the night when you are present for whatever goes. And tonight, right now, as you lie here, this is your wonderful night. Not because it has been perfect, but because you are here. You are listening. You are breathing. And that is the only qualification the Buddha ever asked for. Let us rest with one last story. There was a traveler who had been walking for many years, not running from anything, not fleeing any danger, just walking, searching, looking for the place where they would finally feel at home. They had visited many places on their journey. Villages nestled in valleys where the morning mist hung low over the fields like a soft white cloth. Towns built along the coast where the sound of the ocean was always present, a constant breathing, steady and vast, as though the whole earth were inhaling and exhaling. Hill towns where the air was thin and clear and you could see for miles in every direction, all the way to the blue edge of the world. Mountain monasteries where the silence was so deep you could almost hear it hum, and where the monks moved slowly through their days like fish through still water. And each place, when they first arrived, seemed like it might be the one. The air smelled right. The people were kind. The landscape spoke to something inside them that was hard to name, a feeling like recognition, like remembering a place you had never been. And for a while, days or weeks or sometimes even months, they would settle in and think, yes, this is it. This is where I belong. But always, eventually, the feeling faded. The village that had seemed so perfect began to feel too small. The coastal town grew noisy. The mountain air grew cold, and the silence that had seemed so inviting began to feel lonely. The restlessness would return, like a tide that had gone out for a while and now came rushing back in, and the traveler would pack their few belongings and move on. Always moving on, always believing that the next place would be the right one, the one where the restlessness would finally stop and the feeling of home would finally stay. After many years of this, the traveler grew tired, not just in the body, though the body was tired too, from all those miles, all those roads, all those mountains, but tired in a deeper way, tired of searching, tired of the cycle of hope and disappointment, tired of believing that home was always somewhere else. One evening, on a road that was not particularly beautiful and in a landscape that was not particularly special, the travelers simply stopped. Not because they had arrived anywhere, not because they had found what they were looking for, but because they were too tired to take another step. They sat down on a flat stone by the side of the road. The stone was warm from the afternoon sun. It held the heat the way old things do, slowly, generously, as if it had been saving it all day for exactly this moment. Around them, there was nothing remarkable. Tall grass, golden in the late light. A few trees with broad, spreading branches. The sound of insects in the warm air. A gentle, continuous hum. A bird singing somewhere, a simple, repeating song, 3 notes over and over, patient and unhurried, as if it had all the time in the world. Which of course it did. The sky was beginning to change color, the way it does in the hour before sunset, when the day is not quite over but the night has already begun to arrive. Pale blue fading to gold at the edges. A few clouds, thin and soft as old cotton, drifting slowly toward the horizon, in no particular hurry to get anywhere. The traveler sat there and breathed. For the first time in a very long time, they did not think about the next village, or the next road, or the next place that might finally feel like home. They were too tired for that. Too tired for hope, too tired for disappointment, too tired for the whole cycle of searching and arriving and leaving. They simply sat and breathed and watched the sky change, and they felt the warmth of the stone beneath them, solid and steady and real. And something happened that they did not expect. The restlessness, which had been their constant companion for years, the itch in the feet, the pull toward the horizon, the whisper that said, "Not here, not yet, keep going," went quiet. Not because it had been defeated, not because the traveler had figured something out, but because, for the first time in a very long time, the traveler was not going anywhere. They were just here, on a stone, by a road, in the evening light. And here, it turned out, was enough. Not in a dramatic way. There were no bells ringing, no sudden insights, no voice from the sky saying, "You have arrived," just a quiet settling. Like a bird that has been circling and circling and finally folds its wings and lands. The landing was soft. The branch was solid. And the bird, at last, was still. The traveler looked around at the tall grass, the ordinary trees, the unremarkable road. And for the first time, they did not see a place they were passing through. They saw a place they were in. A place that was complete, a place that held them, gently and without conditions, the way the earth holds everything that rests upon it. And they thought about all the places they had been, the misty villages, the coastal towns, the mountain monasteries, and they realized something quietly astonishing. Every one of those places had been beautiful. Every one of them had been, in its own way, home. The problem had never been the places. The problem had been the leaving. The restlessness that said, "Not here, not yet, try the next one." That voice had been so loud, so persistent, so convincing, that it had drowned out the quiet voice underneath. The voice that had been saying, all along, "Here, this is it. You are home." They had been carrying home in their own heart for years and looking for it everywhere else. It was like searching the entire house for a pair of glasses that were on your head the whole time. Not a tragedy, just a gentle, human comedy. The kind of thing you can smile about once you see it. They did not get up and walk again that evening. They stayed on the warm stone until the stars came out, one by one, like candles being lit in a vast, dark room. And when they lay down beside the road to sleep, with the grass as a pillow and the sky as a ceiling, they felt something they had been searching for in every village and every town and every mountain monastery. Home, not a place, a feeling. The feeling of being exactly where you are and wanting, for once, to be nowhere else. There is a beautiful verse attributed to the old Zen teachers. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. The traveler had been doing so much. Walking, searching, hoping, leaving. And all the while, spring had been coming, over and over again, in every place they rested, in every breath they took. The grass had been growing. The world had been offering itself. They had just been too busy walking to notice. The Buddha said, "You yourself must walk the path. No one else can walk it for you." But perhaps we could add, gently, and the path does not lead somewhere else. It leads right here. It has always led right here. Every step you have ever taken has brought you to this moment, and this moment is the destination. There is a quality to this evening that is worth noticing. Not the evening in the story, but this one. The one you are inside right now. You have been listening. You have been resting. Stories have moved through you like water through a riverbed, some of them settling, some of them flowing on. And whether you have been awake for every word or drifting in and out, whether you remember the details or only a feeling, that is fine. That is exactly right. Because the teaching we have been sitting with all night is not something you need to memorize. It is not a fact to file away or a technique to practice tomorrow morning. It is more like a scent that lingers in a room after the flowers have been taken away. You may not be able to name it, but you can still feel it. Just to be alive is enough. We started with these words hours ago now, when the evening was just beginning and everything was still ahead of us. A Zen teacher spoke them to a student, and that student carried them forward and passed them on. And now, many years and many voices later, they have arrived here. At this quiet moment, at this bed, at these ears. And now, as the evening draws to a close, let us hold them one last time. But let us hold them differently than we have held them before. Not as a truth you must believe, not as a rule you must follow, not even as an answer, but as a question, a soft, open question, with a question mark on both sides, like two cupped hands holding something small and alive. Just to be alive is enough, and you do not have to answer it. You can simply sit with it. The way you might sit with a friend who has asked you something so honest that you need to pause before you respond. Not because you do not know the answer, but because the question itself is doing something to you. It is softening something, opening something, making a little room inside you for something that was already there but could not quite get through. There is a teaching in the Zen tradition that the best questions are not the ones that have answers. They are the ones that change you by being asked. They are called koans, these questions, and they are not puzzles to be solved, but doorways to be entered. What is the sound of one hand clapping is not a riddle with a clever answer. It is a question that, if you sit with it long enough, rearranges something inside you. It creates a crack in the wall of the ordinary mind, and through that crack, something fresh and alive comes in. Just to be alive is enough, can be held in this way. Not as a statement to agree or disagree with, but as a koan, a living question, something to carry gently in your pocket like a smooth stone and touch from time to time and wonder about. And each time you touch it, you might find that it feels a little different, a little warmer, a little more like the truth. There is a story about a student who went to a Zen teacher and asked, very earnestly, "If I practice with all my heart, will I find what I am looking for?" And the teacher, who was known for his warmth and his dry, gentle humor, thought about this for a moment. He did not answer right away. He sat with the question the way he sat with everything, patiently, without rushing. Then he smiled, a small, kind smile, and said, "If your practice is sincere, it is almost as good, almost as good." The student blinked. They had been expecting either a yes or a no. Yes, you will find it. Or no, it is not possible. But almost? What kind of answer is that? It is like asking, "Will I reach the top of the mountain?" and being told you will get very close, encouraging and frustrating at the same time. But over time, over many years of sitting and walking and chopping vegetables and watching the light change on the monastery walls, the student came to understand that almost was the most generous answer the teacher could have given. Because almost means you do not have to be perfect. You do not have to get it right. You do not have to arrive at some flawless, permanent state of peace before your practice counts. Before your life counts. Before this evening counts. Almost is enough. Think about that for a moment. What if you did not have to fully understand everything we have talked about tonight? What if you did not have to believe it completely, or feel it perfectly, or remember it all in the morning? What if almost was the whole teaching? Because almost is where most of us live, most of the time. We almost feel at peace. We almost believe that life is enough. We almost let go. And we think that the almost is a sign that we have not quite made it, that we have fallen short, that there is still further to go. But the teacher was saying something different. The teacher was saying, the almost is beautiful. The reaching toward peace, even if you do not fully arrive, is itself a kind of peace. The willingness to try, even when you are not sure it will work, is itself a kind of faith. The act of lying here tonight, listening to these words, letting them wash over you even if they do not all land perfectly, is itself a kind of practice. And it is almost as good as the thing you think you are looking for. Which is to say, it is very, very good. There is a beautiful freedom in almost, a lightness, a permission to be exactly where you are, even if where you are is not where you thought you should be. Even if you still have doubts. Even if the restlessness has not completely stopped. Even if just to be alive is enough, is something you can feel in some moments and not in others. Even if, right now, it is something you believe about 70% of, or 50, or even 20. Almost is not a failure. Almost is a kind of tenderness. It is the teaching saying to you, gently, you are doing fine. You are closer than you think. You do not need to cross any finish line tonight. You just need to rest. And now, let us return one last time to the stars. Do you remember the beginning of our evening together? The wide sky, the soft air, the sense of lying on the earth and looking up at something vast and unhurried. We talked about a person on their last night of a trip, lying on their back in the mountains, watching the stars and feeling, for a few breaths, that nothing was missing. We have traveled a long way since then, you and I, through rivers and gardens and kitchens and roadsides, through the deep teachings and the gentle ones, through stories about travelers and fishermen and potters and farmers and monks and teachers who said exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment. And now here we are, back under the stars, or if not under the real stars, then under the ones in your imagination, which are just as real in their own way and just as generous with their light. The sky is still there. The stars are still there. Whether you can see them from where you are or not, they are shining. They have been shining the whole time we have been talking together. These ancient lights, traveling across distances so enormous that the mind cannot hold them. Some of those stars are so far away that their light has been traveling toward you for thousands of years, and yet it arrives gently at your eyes. Each star makes the journey every night without complaint or hesitation. It does not wonder if the journey is worth it. It does not ask if anyone is watching. It simply shines, and you are here under them. Whether you are in a quiet room or a busy city, whether the windows are open or closed, whether the night outside is dark or lit up with street lamps, the stars are overhead. The same stars that the Buddha sat beneath when he taught his students about the wonderful night. The same stars the old Zen teacher looked at from his monastery window. The same stars the traveler finally lay beneath on the side of an ordinary road when they stopped walking long enough to come home. They do not change, but we do. And tonight, after everything we have shared, you are perhaps a little softer than you were when we began. A little more willing to let this moment be what it is. A little more open to the possibility that nothing is missing. That this breath, this quiet, this gentle descent towards sleep is complete. Not perfect. Not finished. Not all figured out, but complete. The way a single note of music is complete. It does not contain the whole symphony. It is just one note, but it is whole in itself. It rings out, and it is beautiful, and it does not need the next note in order to be real. Your life tonight is like that note. It is not the whole song, but it is whole. It is ringing, and it is beautiful. There is a line from the old texts: 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. The teaching that was passed from one teacher to another, the words "just to be alive is enough," have now been passed to you. Not as a burden, not as an assignment, but as a light. And you can carry it if you wish, or you can simply sit in its warmth tonight and let it be what it is. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. A life that stretches on, and a life that is just this one evening. Both complete, both whole, both fully Buddha. Each one a wonderful night. Each one an auspicious day. Not because each one is easy, or long, or full of pleasant things, but because each one is real. Each one is yours, and you are here for it, fully here. And that makes it the whole thing. Whichever face the night is wearing, it is your night. Whichever face you are wearing, it is your face. Complete, whole, enough. As you settle deeper into rest, there is nothing you need to carry forward from tonight. You do not need to remember the stories. You do not need to recall the teachings or the names or the details. The fisherman can put down his net. The potter can step away from her wheel. The gardener can set down her tools. The traveler can close their eyes. They are all resting now, the way you are resting, in the quiet that comes at the end of a long and good day. If something stays with you from tonight, let it stay, the way a leaf sometimes lands on your shoulder and rides with you for a while before the wind carries it on. It chose you, that leaf. Let it rest where it landed. And if everything dissolves, if by morning all you remember is a feeling, a warmth, a sense of having been held by something kind, that is more than enough. That is the whole thing. The only thing you need to do right now is what you are already doing. Breathing, resting, being alive in this quiet, gentle moment between wakefulness and sleep. The old teachers used to say that the space between waking and sleeping is one of the most precious spaces there is. It is the place where the mind finally loosens its grip on the day, where the stories we tell ourselves grow soft and blurry at the edges, where the body remembers what the mind so often forgets. That rest is not something you earn. It is something you are. Beneath all the doing and the thinking and the planning, you are, at your core, a being at rest, a being at peace. And tonight, you are simply returning to that. Just to be alive is enough. Not tomorrow. Not when things are different. Not when you have figured it all out. Now, tonight, here, in this breath, in this stillness, in this one wonderful, unrepeatable night. The stars are shining. The night is quiet. And you, dear listener, are exactly where you need to be. Let this be your one wonderful night. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving yourself this time, this quiet, this gentle space between the day that has passed and the sleep that is coming. Wherever you are right now, this is your auspicious night. The stars are above you, whether you can see them or not. The silence is around you, even if the world outside is still humming its quiet song. And you are here, in the most ancient and sacred of human postures, lying down, letting go, preparing to rest. We have traveled together through many stories tonight. A traveler on a country road, a fisherman on a river, a potter at her wheel, a gardener learning the beauty of space, a monk discovering the whole universe in a kitchen, a teacher and a student sitting together in a garden, sharing the simple gift of presence. And through all of these stories, one quiet thread has been running, like a river beneath the earth, always flowing, always there, whether we can see it or not. Just to be alive is enough. Hold it gently. Hold it as a question, if that feels right. Or hold it as a comfort. Or let it go entirely and simply feel whatever you feel. There is no wrong way to end this evening. Sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. Both faces resting now. 1,000 years and a single night. Both whole, both at peace, both held in the wide, generous arms of this evening. You do not need to be anywhere else. You do not need to be anyone else. You do not need to carry anything forward or figure anything out. The morning will take care of itself. Tonight is yours. And it is, in every way that matters, enough. Let your eyes close, if they have not already. Let your breath find its own rhythm. Let the stories and the teachings settle around you like soft blankets, layer after layer, each one a little warmer than the last. And know that you are held, that you are welcome, that you are home. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.